Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you say a few words about your current role and what's in your purview?
Sure. Well, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. And I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Coalfire.
Mm-hmm.
Coalfire is the largest pure play cybersecurity services firm in the industry. We're number one in compliance. We support all the major cybersecurity compliance regulations, providing advisory and assessment services. We're also number one in cloud pen testing, as well as our advisory services have a special focus on FedRAMP, which for those of you not familiar with FedRAMP, that's the regulation that cloud service providers need to meet to provide their service to the federal government. So, and I'm responsible for all of marketing at Coalfire. So the broad remit of marketing activities here.
So everything from is it demand generation? Is it advertising, events, field marketing, channel?
All of the above.
All of the above. I understand. It's a lot of different channels, different functions. That's great. So this kind of paints a picture of the point in the career arc. But can you talk a little bit about how you got to where you are? Maybe say a few words about how you got into cybersecurity marketing and what was the impetus of that, and so that we can connect the dots.
Yeah, of course. So I would say, Misha, my background is not very typical for most CMOs in cybersecurity marketing. I have a technical background. I have a computer science degree. Out of undergraduate, I went and worked in a management training program with GE, and quickly determined that I wasn't that keen to go on a systems development kind of career path. Mm-hmm. So I went back and got my MBA, and following the MBA, I worked for the first half of my career doing management consulting work all around go-to-market topics in the high-tech industry. So I really got deep exposure to all of the different marketing functions and disciplines in doing that work. And that ultimately positioned me for a in-house marketing leadership role that I got with one of my clients. So that worked out well. And then from there, I became a CMO, which I've been the last 13 years, and the last 10 years within cybersecurity. And I guess as I look back on it, I would say a couple things for folks kind of planning their journey. One is consulting is a great way to get a very broad set of exposure to different marketing disciplines, become very expert in focused areas, and it really can help you kind of give you a very fast, broad set of marketing skills in that capacity. The other thing I would say is my technical background has always been a real benefit to me. So for those folks who have technical backgrounds and might be interested in getting more into the business side of things, or communications, or various marketing roles, the opportunity is huge. And it may not move from a technical role directly into a CMO position, but there's lots of avenues in. I think particularly like a solutions marketing role is a great entree role for a more technical person into the marketing discipline, and then you can kind of go from there. So
interesting. So I think it certainly provides a leg up in many ways, having this technical background, because I think it's kind of like bridging the two worlds. It's oftentimes cybersecurity executives, they're very technical, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, the marketers, they're very good at crafting the message, but they may not necessarily have the deep expertise into technical problems and respective solutions. But having views into both worlds and having that skill set, I think it's pretty tremendous advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. I think as we think about, as we do our campaigns and our messaging, we always think differently about a business buyer and a technical buyer. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly having that technical background helps to articulate to the technical buyer, and having the kind of the broader business and marketing background really helps you with the executive buyer, right? For those folks who really want to bubble up your value proposition, talk about business outcomes and those types of things, which are much, much more effectively done if you've got a broader business, marketing background.
Certainly, certainly. It's interesting. It's and kind of to double click on some of the advice that you could provide from your vantage point to someone who is either in marketing or maybe even technology marketing, who's looking to focus more onto cybersecurity marketing, or maybe to your point, someone who is in the business side of things or on the technical side of things, who are looking to make a transition. It's sometimes it's a challenge because there's so many things we can be doing at a given point in time, and technology, cybersecurity space is evolving. The threat landscape is evolving. The marketing techniques are everything. Yeah. Everything is in constant state of flux, it seems like. So it's sometimes challenging for people to find something to focus on, something that would be high leverage, because things that are high leverage, they're you can only realize that they were high leverage in hindsight.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, on the tactical level, what would be some of your advice for maybe some of the junior professionals or somebody who's looking to make a transition?
Yeah.
What do you think they should focus on?
Yeah. So for anyone that's kind of early in their journey, I would highly recommend mastering marketing analytics. I like to say that the quant jocks have moved from Wall Street to Madison Avenue, meaning that traditionally finance has always been much more of an analytical discipline than marketing. But 10 years ago, that may have been true, right? Where marketing was much more qualitative, much more creative. But these days, most of what I do is digital marketing, and most of what marketers are focusing on is digital marketing, and that's all about kind of analytics. And so whether you're A/B testing to see what campaigns and messaging are working, whether you're forecasting your pipeline, whether you're doing marketing attribution modeling to understand which tactics and things are working and impacting your pipeline, all of that is very kind of data driven. So I would say whatever role you're playing, really work hard to understand what data is available around the impact of that activity that you're doing, whether it's impressions, whether it's engagements and clicks, and ultimately tie that back to pipeline and ultimately the business outcome that you're focused on. And then as much as you can, either on a daily basis, a weekly basis, whatever is the logical frequency, look at that data and optimize your approach, moving forward. I think if you rely on that, ultimately let the data drive your success, and ultimately that's going to allow you to kind of move more quickly in your career. So data, and really understand the business outcomes of what you're doing as a guiding principle. I think will, just provide an enormous amount of value for you.
Certainly. It's interesting. I think it would be a good segue to the next question. Again, it's kind of a continuation of what you're saying. So obviously, kind of if you look at digital marketing, there's content that we're putting out there. There are email marketing campaigns, syndicated content through different channels. There are kind of field marketing events. So every single activity, you can put some metrics around it. So how many times email was opened, how many times this link was clicked. So in other words, there are certain actions or certain campaigns, certain programs that the marketing function is putting out there. And then we see how the world responds. How many people stopped at our booth at RSA Black Hat? How many of those later on then took us up on the offer to go through a demo? How many of those signed up to do a pilot and became clients and ambassadors, et cetera, et cetera? So all this can be tracked. Yep. What's interesting, and I think it's somewhat new, is that if you think of your service or your product as the planet, and then your prospects are kind of circling on the orbit, and essentially you're trying to increase the gravity, so you're pulling them more and more into your orbit. Yeah. And pulling them away from maybe competing products. So if you use that analogy, a lot of this tracking and a lot of this analytics comes from prospects that are kind of closer, circle in a closer orbit, so to speak. And some of them who may be qualified by their title, maybe it's CISO at a federal agency, but they're not opening emails, they're not responding to LinkedIn messaging. They are, we talked a little bit about before, they're kind of traveling in the dark funnels. Maybe they're in a private Slack community, maybe they're attending a informal gathering of CISOs, and they just share information where insights, information, advice is requested and shared, but it's outside of the reach of any sort of tracking tools. And so usually if you take your total addressable market and split in two buckets: one, prospects who are showing intent, and prospects who are qualified, who fit the ICP profile, but they're pre-intent, they're early in the customer journey. One could argue that those who show intent, they're actively raising their hand, they're downloading the white papers, they're responding to sales and marketing messaging. It's easier. The information is out there to track those, but often sometimes larger portion of the total addressable market, they're earlier in the customer journey, they're busy with other problems, other issues, and therefore they're not creating the signal for the signal tools to be tracked. So how do you think about that? Because
I think it's a really, really important point. And there's various studies out there, Misha, around what percentage of the buyer journey happens before someone is ready to engage with a conversation with your organization. And typically, most research shows that like as much as 70% of that buyer journey is done before someone is ready to talk to a kind of a rep within your organization. And most of it, to your point, is done even before they come to your website. So what we have found very successful is, basically acknowledging this phenomenon that you very well described, that most of the learning is happening from peer-to-peer interactions and, not directly with your organization. So what we do is we partner up with associations and groups and make sure that our experts are part of the research that's done within those associations. They're part of the speaking opportunities in those communities. And that engagement is very much focused around thought leadership and kind of advancing the objectives of that association. So one specific example would be the Cloud Security Alliance. We have members who drive the different initiatives as part of that association, the Cloud Security Alliance. And so through that, we get brand recognition as a company and ultimately influence a lot of people because we're contributing to that research. Another example would be, there's a bunch of great CISO Slack channels, right? These are private channels, peer-to-peer exchanges, no vendors allowed. And we make sure to have our CISO and our representatives that fit the profile engage in those conversations. And again, it's not about pitching the product. It's more about having your thoughts in the company, and by association, your company's thoughts kind of represented kind of in those conversations. That's super critical to reach those folks that, back to your analogy, are kind of traveling way out in the atmosphere, but they're looking and thinking about it. And then the other thing that we do, and you mentioned it, is so we have a subscription with ZoomInfo Marketing Operations Marketing OS platform. And here we have information around when customers are searching for topics that we care about. We're able to give them specific companies and titles that we are focused on, and we get that intelligence before they ever come and visit our website. We just know that these folks are looking for information that we have, solutions for. We also work with the likes of TechTarget, and we do content syndication. So again, we are getting early signals when people are engaging in compliance or they're engaging in content testing. And from there, we automatically trigger digital ads that go out to those organizations. We typically, depending on a number of factors, will also trigger outreach sequences. So a series of emails with kind of thought leadership in them. And the results have been amazing. We're seeing like open rates on our emails that are following this buyer intent data are
Mhm.
typically in the 50 to 80% range, which is crazy good, right? Typically you'll see, open rates less than 10% or 10 to 20%.
Yeah, single digits.
So it really, I would say as a guiding principle, all of your marketing digital spend, all of your outreach should really start with these earliest buyer intent signals that you can get. And it's before they come to your website. And
Mhm.
that in turn typically will drive them to your website. And then you can do your, harness that traffic and kind of go from there. But that's really how we've oriented all of our marketing approach today, kind of
Mhm.
in. So, in summary, get your folks inserted into the associations, into the private Slack channels and those things to kind of get
Mhm.
brand out there. Don't be salesy. Build everything you do in terms of demand gen from those early buyer intent signals, and then go from there.
Interesting. Interesting. So it's almost like at the you're creating value uh, for potential clients who are very early in the customer journey, almost giving without asking in terms of thought leadership, in terms of research papers, in terms of advice. So that, again, to your point, it's not salesy. You're not trying to close anyone on anything. You're really kind of providing content that those cybersecurity practitioners would find valuable and actionable, and that kind of walks them through the customer journey on their own time. And when they're ready, when they're showing those those buying signals, then you can provide more middle of the funnel and options for them to engage.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Now switching gears a little bit. So I think I understand what is working for you now, but what are some of the challenges? Would you find, broadly speaking, what's some of the biggest challenges facing cybersecurity marketers, you think, these days?
It's a fascinating industry, and I think one of the biggest challenges that most of us face is just getting our message out and heard. This industry is enormously fragmented. Most organizations, when you profile what their cybersecurity solutions and footprint look like, they typically have over 50 different products that they're using. I saw a recent study that about a third of the companies had over 100 different cybersecurity solutions, in their infrastructure. Crazy numbers. And, this is, based on the fact that this is a very, I will say, immature industry. It's going to take the next, 10 plus years to mature. And ultimately, we're going to see just a ton of consolidation. We're already starting to see kind of solutions kind of merging together, and that consolidation, aggregation into more simple kind of holistic approaches is really going to kind of advance. But anyway, the reality is in the next couple of years, you're still going to have hundreds, thousands of folks that are all trying to get their message out. And it's really kind of, from a marketing discipline perspective, a real challenge. Part of what I'm doing is just taking what is our value proposition and leveraging partners to tell a much broader story that gets resonance in the market. So as a real life example, we partner with Google and AWS. And instead of just telling a story to the market about compliance, where we have expertise, we talk about moving to the cloud and quickly getting a compliant environment set up, right? This has a much broader appeal to the market. And ultimately, you have the reach of Coalfire, you have the reach of the likes of AWS. So your reach is broader, your message is a more high level message, and you're going to kind of get more traction. So I would encourage everyone to think about, if you're a product provider, what are the adjacent products that relate to an overall solution? And, don't go pitching features and functionality. Talk about thought leadership, talk about where the market is going, but do so with a kind of a suite of related adjacent, providers, product providers. Or if you're a service provider, think about which products you have expertise in, go to market with those products, talk about both the services related to that product as well as the product itself, and kind of take advantage of whatever opportunity you can to broaden your message, talk at a higher level, and expand the reach with some of your adjacent partners. Otherwise it's very, very hard to compete just as an individual player. There's only a handful of folks that I would say have kind of mass brand awareness. From everybody else kind of having a partnership strategy and kind of really elevating your thought leadership and going to market, with adjacent folks, is super critical.
Certainly. Well, it makes a lot of sense because you go to RSA or Black Hat and RSA would have like 400 sponsors and you go from booth to booth and a lot of them use some of the similar catchy.
Everything looks the same, right?
Well, not everything, but you see like certain words being overused and certain themes being overused, and you're starting to think, well, maybe instead of being better, try to be different. And I think it's but the other side, which is absolutely true, I think there's a lot of consolidation that needs to happen, so that because it's managing 50 relationships for a CISO, it's impossible. And how can you expect 50 to 100 solutions? How do you expect them to interoperate? How do you know that bringing an additional solution doesn't create gaps in your cybersecurity posture and actually opens up opportunities for attackers to exploit them? I think it's well, and also it seems like the economic environment has turned a little bit. So, which for acquisitive companies like Palo Alto and Cisco and the likes, there will be a lot of opportunities to pick up good teams and good products.
Absolutely.
So I think that we'll see a lot of that in the coming years. And speaking of that, kind of what's your outlook on the future? What do you think some of the 2 or 3 themes, whether it's technological or will play out and will be impactful for cybersecurity marketers in the next 6-12 months, maybe a couple of years?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is that the cyber regulations are going to continue to come at a greater pace than they are today. Many organizations have 10 or more different regulations that they need to worry about, and the bigger companies have 50 or 100. And so we continue to see that trend kind of progressing. And so for a marketer, it is critically important that you, communicate what your cyber posture is. You be prepared to articulate your incident response plan. And, there's some new regulations coming out at the end of this year from the SEC that basically any public company that is breached, and if it's a material breach that could impact the price, you have to come to market in 4 days with that information, which is super fast. So you really have to revisit your analyst, investor relations, customer relations around a topic like that. And it's a super delicate topic that you have to be really thoughtful about to do it well. So I think in the next year or so, we're going to see these processes evolve to respond to the increasing regulations and the importance of marketing in being compliant and in marketing when those situations happen, whether it's a breach. Many organizations have trust centers essentially that describe all of their certifications, all of their security policies and procedures. And I think this is a super best practice that we're going to see kind of rolling out across just about every single organization, not just the kind of leading tech organizations that are doing it today. And I also think that we will see more and more that companies can tie their product and their value proposition to regulations as a kind of a conversation starter, if you will. And the more companies can help other companies tell their cybersecurity story, the better. So we, as an example, we provide compliance services, as I've mentioned. We have digital seals that our customers can use. We will support their press release. So every company is going to be more focused around telling their cyber story, positioning their cyber posture, and ultimately cyber is going to be more and more a feature, if you will, that's part of your value proposition that you have to tell and your customers and prospects about then kind of keep quiet in the background, which is kind of what used to be the case with cyber. So anyway, your posture, your policies, your certifications are all things that are going to be much more critical to market moving forward as it pertains to regulations. And so I think that's a really big trend that we're going to see kind of blow up, if you will, within the next year, given the new regulation.
Certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah, good.
Two other quick things I would say is one is, with the, the downturn these days in the market that most are facing, I think getting more, we'll be much smarter around multi-touch campaigns, nurture campaigns, and really understanding kind of what works at the middle of the funnel to convert things down and get those attribution models kind of figured out. And then finally, obviously can't have a discussion these days without talking about AI. I truly think that it's in the next year, that's probably where marketing is going to change the most, is from AI. And I think, most predict that we'll be 20% or more efficient within marketing due to embracing of AI. And I firmly believe that. I think in terms of, cross-sell recommendations, message optimization, forecasting refinement, content generation, like all of these things really have enormous value for us as marketers. And obviously we have to be careful not to take everything kind of rotely from the engine, and make sure that you personalize it and put your brand voice and all that good stuff. That goes without saying, but still the tools are super powerful. And so I think we will see a different type of knowledge worker within marketing that is kind of embracing all of this capability. And it's going to be a whole new day, which is super exciting, right? I mean,
absolutely. Well, I think it's to your point, it's probably not going to replace, amplify existing teams rather than just, I think there's a lot of fear in terms of who's going to be impacted adversely by that. Patrick, this is amazing. This is very interesting insights that you shared. I know we're kind of up on time a little bit. What's the best time to connect with you? Where can people find you?
Sure. So I'm reachable, Patrick Kehoe, Kehoe, out on LinkedIn. So anyone hit me up on LinkedIn for information, or email is pkehoe@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out with questions or comments or suggestions, but available anytime.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Enjoyed it.